今日の沢木の下着の色、知ってるか?
It is April 6th, 2022. I decided to watch Tomodachi Game Episode 1, which just released. As the episode is about to end, I think to myself, this episode was nothing special, but hey, it could be interesting going forward. Then Yuichi utters those bizarre words and ends the episode with a maniacal smile. After hearing that, it's almost as if a neuron activated. I liked what I heard. Yeah, out of context, that's a weird thing to like. I was so taken aback by what happened because at no point did I expect those weird words to be uttered, nor did I expect his personality to change like it did. That twist caught me completely off guard, and I just knew that I was in for a good time going forward. I ended up enjoying the rest of the anime thoroughly. Fast forward 4 years now, and there are no indications of a second season. So, what happened to Tomodachi Game? For those who do not know about it, Tomodachi Game is a high-stakes strategy series that follows 5 high school friends, Yuichi, Tenji, Shiho, Kokorogi, and Shibei. They receive mysterious letters tricking them into meeting up together, which subsequently results in them being ambushed and knocked unconscious. Upon waking up, they are told that one of the 5 has a large debt, totaling 20 million yen, which needs settling, forcing them to play Tomodachi Game to help pay it off, something any true friend would do to help a friend in need. After the first extremely simple game, it is clear that somebody isn't cooperating with the group and is actively betraying them. Yuichi is given the difficult task of figuring out who the traitor is and why they are doing it. Tomodachi Game features a variety of twisted friendship games that test the friend group's trust and bonds to one another, while showcasing how dangerous money can be. How many of their friends' sins are they willing to forgive, and is their friendship truly unbreakable? Now onto the question people are wondering about: how accurate was Tomodachi Game's anime adaptation to its source? The anime adapts about 26 chapters of the manga. Just like with any other anime I've covered for the series, Tomodachi Game has some extremely minor changes from the source, mainly to either help with time constraints or to help the story flow better in anime format. In the case of this series, I view most changes from the source as nitpicks, since it still remains faithful to the overall story it presents. The anime adaptation absolutely nails the tone shifts of the story, especially Yuichi's actions both visually and audibly, creating an extremely enjoyable experience with them. The most amount of changes to the story come from just before, the beginning of, and directly after Game 3, Friendship Hide and Seek. The anime quickly goes through some of the rules and then sprinkles in explanations of other ones while the game progresses, whereas the manga thoroughly goes through the rule set before starting. I understand why this was changed, otherwise a whole episode would be dedicated to strategy and talking about rules, which wouldn't be entertaining, so this isn't that big of a deal in my opinion. The anime also differs from the source material by focusing more time on finding Tenji a hiding spot and placing more emphasis on the fact that he and Yuichi have not eaten anything in 3 days, which is a massive disadvantage for them. I felt like the anime makes it a bit too obvious that K is the true leader of Group K during the 3rd game. However, this might be the case because I already know what happens since this was a rewatch, but it also could have been because of how the anime presented it. Another change made in the anime comes directly after Game 3. 2 of Yuichi's classmates inform him that something is going on at Shibei's house, which is him being arrested. Whereas in the manga, Yuichi and Tenji decide to pay a visit to Shibei's house since several days had passed with zero communication to anyone else in the friend group. The final minuscule difference comes while the police drag Shibei away. Yuichi tries to provoke Shio's dad much more during this event in the manga. The gist of it is still there in the anime, but I enjoyed it more in the manga. I give Tomodachi Game's anime adaptation an A because it does what an anime should do. Follow the source, make some minor changes that will help enjoyment or pacing, and through the use of voice acting, animation, and music enhance the overall series. I give both the manga and the same content in the anime an 8.25 out of 10. If you're interested in picking up where the anime left off, start reading the manga at chapter 26. In my estimation, there's enough story remaining to have another 2 to 3 seasons if it were to continue with the anime. The anime actually covers half or 5 of the 10 total games played throughout the entire story, if you include the Weak Win and Rock Paper Fingers, both of which aren't official Tomodachi games but still follow the essence of the idea. How far are you willing to go to help a friend out? So what happens after the anime? Buckle up because there's just over 100 chapters to summarize, including the games, their rules, and outcomes. If you count the non-official games like I do, Game 6, which is where the anime leaves off, is Friend's Sin Court. Shibei is put on trial being charged for killing Masakazu, his father. This game plays out like a normal trial, including evidence and testimonies from various witnesses that prove Shibei committed the crime. It is the job of Tenji, Kokorogi, and Yuichi to be Shibei's lawyer and prevent his conviction. The 3 of them have 1 week to persuade the 28 jurors of his innocence, requiring a unanimous vote. What is interesting though is that the jurors are their classmates and each vote comes in the form of the money needed to go on their school trip. 70,000 yen each, totaling 1.96 million yen required to pass this game. Remember that these kids have already been robbed of this money once and now must willingly give it up again, and to a person who they think likely stole it in the first place. This game was a nasty cliffhanger to leave the anime audience on. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this is easily the worst game played in the series, but after it, the manga gets even better and crazier. There are some important details to make note of while this trial takes place that progresses the story, but the end result, how Yuichi proves Shibei's innocence and how he secures the votes, is underwhelming. He ends up using suggestive pictures of Kokorogi to blackmail their homeroom teacher into setting up a wire transfer scam to the class, securing the funds on time. This clears the game and adds Shibei back to the roster for future games to be played. Since this is a special game, there's no reward money for clearing it. Instead, the group is rewarded with absorbing Shibei's debt, which he received after his father's death, totaling 500 million yen, split between 4 people, since Shio's whereabouts are unknown and aren't revealed until a later game. Shibei, who wasn't allowed to speak for the duration of the game, reveals that he was set up and woke up covered in blood. The biggest clue going forward from this game is the fact that Shibei and Masakazu had an argument in which his dad mentions Tomodachi game unprompted, meaning he, a politician, knows of the existence of it. If you pay attention thus far, each person is now carrying a ridiculous amount of debt which would take forever to pay off if the rewards for beating each game remain at such a low amount. Realizing this, Yuichi demands that their friend group be placed into the adult version of Tomodachi game, where the stakes are much higher and the rewards much more lucrative, as his goal is to crush the game, ending its existence. So for games 7 through 10, they are competing mostly against adults who have so much more to lose. Only Shibei and Yuichi participate in the first adult Tomodachi game, Friend's Prison. The venue is a prison where a total of 12 prisoners, divided into 2 6-person cell blocks, each serve 20-year terms. Other notable participants in this game are the leader of Group K in Game 3, K, the man who forced Yuichi to participate in a fake Tomodachi game, Kuroki, and Shibei's former housemaid with a grudge against his family, who was also a witness in the previous game, Saori. In this game, there are 3 ways to serve your sentence and finish the game. First, spend 20 years in prison, which obviously nobody wants to do. The second option involves penal labor. Everybody works together to stand 120,000 dominoes upright, which would take about 10 days to accomplish. If they are toppled over, either purposefully or accidentally, they must be placed upright once again to count. The third option is escaping by finding a key, but only one person can escape per key. The biggest role in this game is the tip-off system, where each night prisoners can anonymously vote for somebody who is suspected of using a key for an upcoming jailbreak. If the vote is over 50%, they are exiled and gain 100 million yen in debt. Any type of violence is prohibited, incurring the same punishment, exiling, and debt accumulation. If the game is cleared through labor, the reward is 100 million each, but if you are the jailbreaker, your reward is 200 million yen, and those who remain acquire 400 million in debt. If you've been paying attention to this series thus far, the easy option never happens. This game was never going to end peacefully through penal labor, especially with the reward money being that high and the pre-existing hatred between some of the participants. This game proves that basically everybody there is scum, since they each easily could have gotten a large sum of money for little work. The result of this game is that every participant is exiled except Kuroki, Kei, and Yuichi. The 2 geniuses, Yuichi and Kei, work together flawlessly even without directly conversing with one another during the game. They escape with the only 2 keys in existence, finding them right at the beginning. Yuichi creates several fakes to catch other players out, and together with Kei, they systematically get everyone else either voted off or disqualified through violence. By getting others exiled, the amount of money Tomodachi game could gain from increased debts is minimized from the 400 million each if they just escaped immediately with the keys to just 100 million added to most people. However, Kuroki is not lucky like the others, gaining 400 million yen in debt. Yuichi never claims 5 of his fingers from their last encounter, but he does teach Kuroki one final lesson here. Kei's curiosity of Yuichi's past and respect for him is on full display after the game, as he asks to be Group C's 5th member going into Game 8, bet everything. Group C reluctantly adds Kei to the team despite not fully trusting him, since they would be at a disadvantage otherwise. Good thing they do add him because he helps immensely in this 2-part game. Before I summarize it, I should say that I view them as separate games, even though the outcome of Part 1 does heavily influence Part 2. In Bet Everything, 4 teams of 5 spend an undetermined amount of time aboard a ship, with its destination being an island for Part 2 of this game. Money is king, and the more you have of it, the more advantages you have in both games. Everything has its own price on the ship, including things like food, cameras, and intel. The goal is to increase your team's savings so that you can proceed to the second part. To gather funds to gamble with, each player is assigned a varied monetary value by the Tomodachi Game Administration and can be sold for their worth. Any player that is designated as sold cannot participate in gambling, being placed in a room with others who have been sold. They can be bought back for the same price or abandoned for their worth going into the next game. Once the ship reaches its destination, each person must pay a 10 million yen boarding fee in order to continue on to the next game or be saddled with another 100 million in debt. Yuichi and crew must deal with the insane leaders of the other three groups, them being a Yakuza man named Kaido, accompanied by his adopted gambling whiz daughter Satone, an old man and leader of a cult named Kamishiro, and the sadist Mishima. In this arc, they play a bunch of games ranging from poker to creative ones the participants come up with on their own. A bit after the game starts, Yuichi proposes a special new rule that everybody else agrees to add. This rule requires written documentation for all bets, including the consent of both parties. This helps to make bets safer and the terms more understandable for everyone involved. Without this documentation, the gamble is voided, and the party that breaks the agreement must pay a steep 100 billion yen penalty. What the other leaders never expected was that this would actually help Yuichi win the game through a loophole. He hedges his bet in the final game with Satone, manipulating those sold by their leaders, and cashes out massively, earning 1.325 billion yen. Yuichi's value was 0 since his future is uncertain. By having no value, he was able to be invisible, buying and selling himself at will. This allowed him the ability to manipulate those idiots who were sold to participate in a final bet. The game was predicting the final order of the teams for Bet Everything, which Yuichi guessed correctly, betting much bigger on this outcome and having it in his back pocket just in case he didn't win the other game with Satone. To secure this win, he bought a Tomodachi Game admin to falsely call for the end of the game. Each leader bought back their idiot members who gambled since they thought that the first part was over, making this a valid game. Lucky for Yuichi, before the leaders caught on, the ship reached its destination, securing his victory. Winning this game puts Yuichi's team at a massive disadvantage going into the next game, and he uses it as leverage. He promised to end Tomodachi Game once and for all and is willing to pay off others as long as they submit to him. Mishima is forced to oblige since he's bankrupted, having himself and only one other teammate remaining. Kaido is much better off. He doesn't take Yuichi's deal, but remains willing to help him accomplish his goal. Kaido and his daughter move on, still having 280 million yen. The final boss, Kamishiro, is knocked unconscious and sold by one of his caretakers, Shinji, for 790 million yen. He also agrees to work with Yuichi, but later on we learn that's a lie, and he has other motivations. Game 9 is called Friends Battle Royale. 3 ships worth of players are forced to wear a collar and randomly scattered throughout a 20 square kilometer island. Throughout it, there are debtors wearing hoods who chase after the contestants like zombies. If a player is caught, their assets, both current and future, will be confiscated and the zombies' debt erased. The contestants use the money gained from the previous game to defend themselves from these zombies with a 10-second stun bullet costing 1 million yen and a kill bullet costing 100 million. Those bullets only work on zombies. There are opportunities to earn both money and special bullets through events, ones that will stun other players for a minute. This game only ends when 5 players remain. Shiho makes a return to the playing field during this game as well. So much happens throughout the course of this game. Yuichi is hunted by a hitman named Gaku who has plenty of special bullets because he dominated his portion of the first game. He and Shinji were hired by Kokorogi, who is the traitor, and the one who influenced her friend group's participation in Tomodachi Game. She's revealed to be two-faced, hiding a brutal dark side behind the innocent, shy side that's usually on display. She is mentally unstable, and her goal since the beginning was to force Yuichi to depend on and fall in love with her. Kokorogi's team had an overwhelming advantage during this game in the form of a zombie army at their disposal, because at any time Gaku can end a zombie's chance at eliminating their debt through the use of a bullet. Shinji reveals himself to be Taizen Shiba's son, Taizen being the person who raised the manipulative, evil side of Yuichi. Yuichi escapes detection by acting like a zombie for most of the game, observing what happens throughout it, and is able to see the other side of Kokorogi. Kaido reveals to Yuichi that he is a detective sent by Shio's father to crush Tomodachi Game, proving Shio's innocence. Towards the end of the game, Shiba is told some type of secret that forces him to betray his friends, siding with the opposition Kokorogi and Shinji. The end of this game descends into chaos, with the 5 winners being Yuichi, Kokorogi, Shinji, Shio, and Shibe, as everyone places their trust in Yuichi and Shio to clear the final game. The final game is called Tomodachi game. Manabu explains the rules to each person individually atop a snowy mountain. There are 13 participants, 5 of which are the winners from the previous game. Each person is given a smartphone and must spend 2 weeks in the mountains together. They are provided with various tasks via the smartphone that must be completed. Some tasks are given to the whole group, while others are specific to individuals. They are provided with supplies and mostly spend their time either in the lodge where violence is prohibited or a nearby storage shed. Death is a very realistic option here due to the extremely harsh weather conditions that occur throughout the entirety of this game. Before starting, players must choose a password for themselves, and if somebody else reveals it to an admin, they are eliminated. However, if the reporter is wrong, they are given a heavy punishment. Of course, the first task given to everyone is to share their password with one person. Everyone who clears this game is freed of their debts, but if you game over, your life is over. Finally, there is one extra prize. One player voted via an election will be given a 4.5 billion yen prize. Each remaining player votes once and cannot vote for themselves, meaning you want to be on people's good side to receive a vote. Yuichi goes absolutely batshit crazy in this game, not only dominating the entirety of it with his strategy, but shows the unhinged, broken side to him for the entire duration of it. The end results of this game is as follows. 11 of the initial 13 players remain, as Shiho wins the vote all according to Yuichi's plan. He accomplishes this by changing the game so that it better suited him. In order to seem vulnerable, he acted like a reprehensible jerk, making everyone his enemy at the beginning. Nobody would want to share passwords with somebody as crazy as him, but they would be interested in hearing his since they could manipulate him with it. However, he only gave his true password to an admin who was also playing in the game. To make himself invincible, he threatened to kill her unless she quit, which she obliged to do, fearing for her life. Every other person was provided a different false password by him, so if they tried eliminating him, which a couple of people do, they got punished for it. The punishment for a wrong password ended up being that the person who was reported on is told the other person's password. To summarize this whole game, keeping it as simplistic as possible because so much happens, Yuichi ended up securing the majority vote, forcing them to vote for Shio by his command. He acts like a traitor in order to finally demolish this game once and for all, and does so in order to protect his friends. Now you are probably thinking, why did he want others to vote for Shio and not himself? This is because he was given a task that must be kept a secret. It gave him 2 choices. If he won the final vote, the final prize would have doubled to 9 billion yen. If somebody else won it, there would be no prize, but all Tomodachi game debts would be nullified, totaling over 20 billion yen. He chose the latter option, which proves he has changed. After the game concludes, Yuichi meets with Tomodachi Game's boss, Masakazu Shibe, who faked his death. It's then all these small details that have been scattered throughout the story about Tomodachi Game and Yuichi's past finally come together, providing a clear picture. Shibe betrayed Yuichi in Friends Battle Royale for what ended up being 2 different reasons. During that game, he was told of the fact that his own father was the boss of this giant operation. This made him want to be the one who cleared the game, since he and his friends have had to experience all of these horrible events. The other reason ended up being because of Yuichi's past, which angered him. As a child, Yuichi was taught how to manipulate others and that money was the most important thing in the world, from his swindler foster father Taizen Shiba. Contrasting the evil Taizen was the kind Yuka, Yuichi's foster mother, who taught him that friendship is more important than money. Surprisingly, it was Yuichi who formed the first iteration of Tomodachi Game as a child. This game was one that links Group C's broken families together via a tragic past. Group C's parents, Tenji, Shio, and Shibe's fathers, along with Kokorogi and Yuichi's mothers, were all friends growing up. Each one fell under the charm Yuka possessed, being in love with her to some degree. She had an illness that she struggled with, regularly being hospitalized. The game was very simple. Each parent must prepare 1 million yen per month to help Yuka out. If prepared, Taizen will tell Yuichi to be a good boy for his mother, making her feel better and providing the strength needed for her recovery. If the person doesn't provide the money, he'll be naughty, which makes her feel worse. Yuka says that Yuichi is a massive help to her and claims he is the reason why she wants to live. Even her doctor was in on it, working in tandem with Taizen, providing a good or bad diagnosis depending on whether the others paid or not. Yuichi and Taizen preyed on the hope of Yuka's friends, wishing that she would get better soon, doing all they could to help her out. All of Group C are victims of Yuichi's game, as it ruined the lives of his friends' parents and in turn hurt his friends' lives as well. The payments led to marital problems since the payments were often done behind their spouses' backs, and the sketchiness of this whole situation led to distrust between spouses. While being robbed of his money monthly, Masakazu sought compensation from Yuka in the form of sex as a way to restore some balance. This only happened once, and she claimed to be barren, so he thought nothing would come of it. Masakazu was the first person who stopped with the payments, despite being in the best position financially. Feeling immense guilt for giving up on a friend, he later created this version of Tomodachi game to help alleviate his guilt, as he watched other people do the same, value money over friendship. Eventually, this led to him targeting Yuichi, hoping to reciprocate the same pain he felt all this time. Kokorogi's father took on his wife's debts, which he wasn't happy about. It led to him abusing both his wife and daughter. Eventually, the pressure of paying off the debt was too much, leading to his suicide. Kokorogi's harsh upbringing scarred her, which is why she's this crazy person we see by the end. She's thankful to Yuichi for saving her from this living nightmare, but also angry at him for being the reason why she has suffered so much in the first place. At some point, instead of being a tool used by Yuichi, Yuka became his reason for living as well. Her charm rubbed off even on him, as her kindness helped him break free from Taizen's corruption. As a child, Yuichi killed 3 people: his father Taizen, his mother Yuka, and the child she was carrying. He killed Taizen while he was raping her, stabbing him to protect the person he loved from a sinister man. Unfortunately for Yuichi, the person who could read anybody, he couldn't read the one person who he loved most, Yuka. After killing Taizen, the biggest and most shocking reveal of all breaks Yuichi. Yuka wasn't the good person that she acted like. She didn't actually value friendship. She was a gold digger, a person driven by money since she was poor all of her life. Her medical condition was nothing major and could easily be taken care of through medicine. Hearing this breaks Yuichi since he thought Yuka was different. He kills Yuka by purposefully withholding her medicine to protect his most important thing. He wanted to preserve his reason for living, the goodness of her in his mind, the person who taught him that friendship was more important than money, not this evil side to her that was no different than Taizen. Not only did Yuichi kill the woman Masakazu loved, but also his child who she was bearing, which he didn't even know about. This greatly angers Masakazu, who shoots Yuichi before being arrested. Tomodachi game ends with a full circle moment that I love, one that gives Yuichi a redemption for all of the terrible things he did in the past. Yuichi throughout this final game purposefully acts like the worst piece of scum ever. He accepts death, knowing that was the best way to atone for his sins, killing the root of this problem, him. The game is finished, but his friends must make a life or death choice for him. To save his life from this gunshot, he desperately needs medical help that will cost a fortune to keep him alive. And there's no guarantee that he will wake up from his coma. He is poor with no family, so it is impossible for him to pay. With all the pertinent information, do they believe he has changed, or do they think he is still scum? This final situation is similar to the start of the original game he created. Do they value money over friendship? After everything they've been through, Group C finally learns the secret to winning Tomodachi game, to never doubt your friends. Yuichi spends the next 2 years in a coma, only being alive thanks to his friends who chose to carry the burden of his medical debt. They believe in the Yuichi they have known all along, the one who has changed and values friendship over anything else. That summarizes everything major that happens in the series. There's plenty of stuff I missed, but I tried limiting it as much as possible, otherwise this video would easily be much longer. There are many reasons why Tomodachi game is a great read. First of all, it is filled with crazy twists that will keep you guessing until the end. When you start to think that you're getting a better grasp of where it is going, a new piece of vital information is revealed. This alters your projections and keeps you guessing as to who is actually trustworthy within the friend group. Throughout the series, the story's perspective is constantly changing, which I really enjoyed. Sometimes it focuses on Yuichi's point of view, other times it swaps to his friends or even other game participants. By doing this, we get to see what others think of Yuichi and his actions, while it also adds to the story's mystery. The entirety of this manga is him manipulating others or the odds into his favor, while not being noticeable in doing so. How will Yuichi clear each game, and just what type of person is he actually? Is he trustworthy and a changed person or not? As his sinister side is slowly revealed more and more, those are the questions you find yourself asking until the very end. Yuichi is one of the most enjoyable protagonists for me in recent memory. Every single scene he is involved in is so entertaining. If there's some type of loophole he can exploit, you best believe he will find and use it. I love that the author fully embraces the fact that he is a product of his mother and father, having a good side that cherishes friendship over money and an evil cutthroat side to him that seeks to take advantage of others while enjoying their misfortune. He is a broken person who has changed for the better, although he's also somebody you shouldn't look up to. While reading, you hesitantly root for him, hoping he continues beating these games. I say hesitantly here because the way he gets the job done is often not indicative of a good person, especially that sinister smile. His actions are questionable as he does terrible things in order to win, leaving you wondering whether or not he himself is trustworthy. With that being said, it is extremely enjoyable when Yuichi flips that switch, using twisted methods to accomplish his objective. He's not afraid of anyone or anything, being determined to demolish this game and is willing to die in pursuit of this goal. Tomodachi Game's story is not only one of redemption, but acceptance as to who he is. Something else I really enjoyed in the series is that many of the game's participants have ties to somebody else. This isn't just limited to the fact that Yuichi is heavily connected to and ruined his friends and their parents' lives, although that is included. Not everybody is connected to each other either, since there are outsiders who only seek a potential reprieve for their debts through this sick game. For example, one connection is that Gaku wasn't just some ordinary hitman that was hired to stop Yuichi, but he's also the person who killed Tenji's father. Shinji had prior ties to Shio. In order to force her father to stop investigating Tomodachi Game, she was kidnapped and used as leverage by men who were led by Shinji. One of the girls in the final game is the sister of another contestant, a guy in Friend's prison. There's Shibei's maid Saori, who hated the Shibei family, gave testimony in Friend's Sin Court, and played in the game that followed it. Then there's people like Kei, Kuroki, and Satone who become recurring characters in the story. This attention to detail as many different people and events are connected to one another helps world building, storytelling, and makes the series even more enjoyable. Each of the kids from Tomodachi Game take after their parents, almost being like a carbon copy of them. Yuichi is a mixture of his father and mother's teachings, being a phenomenal twisted manipulator, but valuing friendship over money. Shibei is heavily motivated by his love of women, just like his father. Also, before the incident that crushes Masakazu, he, like Shibei, was friendly, had good intentions, but also had trouble reading the room. Shio, like her policeman father, values justice over anything else. Tenji and his father have obsessive sides to them, ones that are studious and want answers to things uncovered by their handiwork. Kokorogi and her mother are both mentally unwell because of traumatic pasts, but adopt different coping mechanisms to deal with it. Her mother is sweet and weak-minded, while Kokorogi acts that way to hide her true self. I do think that is the way she would like to act, but her knowledge of the world and the dangers of money have changed her for the worse. Yet another reason I love Tomodachi Game is that every action Yuichi takes is to hurt the game. He's willing to physically harm the admins, like when he pushed Maria off a cliff in Friendship Hide and Seek. It was a calculated plan where he assumed the Group K members would save her, buying him time to escape, but if they didn't, he doesn't care anyways because it is a win-win situation. He threatens to kill a different admin who is playing in the final game. By telling her his password and forcing her to quit, he could easily win and finally destroy the game once and for all. His hatred of the game is not limited to physical harm, but monetary as well. As showcased in Friend's Prison, Yuichi makes sure that most participants are exiled or disqualified, decreasing the amount of money Tomodachi Game could collect from the losers. He could have ended the game immediately by escaping since he found one of the keys, but everybody's debt punishment would have been quadrupled in that case. In the final game, he had a choice with his task, one where he would have received double the prize money if he won the vote, totaling 9 billion yen. Instead, he chooses the outcome where all debts are nullified, totaling the larger amount of 20 billion yen, hurting Tomodachi Game's pockets even more. All of what I just made note of proves that careful consideration was used in the writing of this series. Time and time again, Yuichi showcases his hatred for Tomodachi Game and wants to ruin it in every capacity possible, and this is consistent throughout the entire narrative. And finally, to wrap up this section of positives for the manga, this series has no bad arcs. Yes, some of them are easily better than others, but every single one of them adds something to keep the story entertaining. For the final section of this review, I want to talk about some criticisms I have with this title. This is a minor critique, but I think Tomodachi Game should have used Tenji better. After Friendship Hide and Seek, his role in the story diminishes greatly. I think he needed a bigger role, and this should have occurred during Friend's Sin Court. I would change it to where Yuichi doesn't play in it, instead having him remain passed out until the game is over and he recovers. Force him to trust in others, which is a major component in Tomodachi Game. have Tenji take the role of leader, solving the situation himself with some minor help from Kokorogi, have him get some of the money back by pleading with the class, and admitting to his mistakes, which is something he already does, but to no effect in the manga. Finally, make Tenji use that girl who loves him for better favor among his classmates to get the remaining necessary votes. This is also something that was considered in this story, although Tenji ends up being a good guy and not going through with it. To still show him as this nice guy that feels horrible for what he did, the epilogue could add in the fact that he's dating or married to that girl to wrap a nice bow around that plotline. Instead, he takes a backseat for most of the series, not even being involved in Game 7 and 10, and being sold almost immediately in Game 8. What saves this a bit is the fact that he does have a big role to play in Friends Battle Royale, which I think was a good strategy and one that he was prepared for thanks to the hide and seek game, nicely tying together different parts of the story. Why I don't have a massive problem with Tenji's usage comes from the fact that Kei ends up taking that role I was hoping Tenji would fill, being Robin to Yuichi's Batman. Kei is yet another genius like Yuichi. He has an attitude and confidence in himself that just adds yet another enjoyable layer to Tomodachi game. He never backs down from challenges and approaches things in a different way than Yuichi does. Kei has many incredible moments throughout the story, but probably my favorite comes from the game he played with Mishima during Bet Everything. In it, they stood in a circle, taking turns striking each other until the loser was forced out of their circle. Kei, who's at a massive disadvantage because of his size, reach, and prior injury, takes a beating from the underhanded Mishima. However, Kei is able to give him a taste of his own medicine, resorting to some dirty tactics himself. While Mishima was taking one of his turns, Kei calculates his move, whips out a knife, and uses his opponent's force against him, resulting in him cutting off one of his fingers. Kei takes advantage of the situation, revealing that he's ambidextrous, and knocks his opponent out of the circle, winning the game. It's such a cool moment and something you would expect Yuichi to pull. I think this series has other problems as well, but for the most part, they too aren't anything major. I think this story could have sprinkled in Yuichi's past throughout the story more instead of saving it all for the final 2 arcs. The manga heavily relies on plot twists, which can make it feel a bit repetitive, but they are still really enjoyable. It would have been cool to see another genius that could rival Yuichi in one of the games. Instead, we come across many self-proclaimed geniuses, but none of them hold a candle to Yuichi. He does get extremely lucky in a couple different scenarios where you just have to chocolate up the plot armor. The same thing can be said of Yuichi being ready for every contingency imaginable, which just isn't possible. But hey, he's the main character, these things are going to happen. Overall, the suspension of belief required to enjoy this manga isn't too bad because it is wildly entertaining throughout. I give Tomodachi game an 8.75 out of 10 and highly recommend reading it for yourself, especially since I think the series gets better after the anime. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me your thoughts on Tomodachi game in the comments. Recommend me some other titles to check out for the What Happened To series. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.